From the 16th to the 19th centuries, the Atlantic slave trade stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history. Fueled by European colonization of the Americas and driven by economic exploitation and racial ideologies, millions of Africans were forcibly transported across the ocean and enslaved on plantations. The story begins with the European colonization of the Americas. Explorers and settlers from Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and the Netherlands sought new lands and opportunities. Colonial expansion created a massive demand for labor to cultivate the vast plantations of sugar, tobacco, cotton, and other cash crops. This demand set the stage for a tragic and inhumane enterprise. Driven by economic exploitation and underpinned by emerging racial ideologies, European traders turned to Africa. They established trading posts along the West African coast, where they exchanged goods for human lives. Captured through raids, wars, and local conflicts, millions of Africans were forcibly marched to coastal forts, where they awaited the harrowing journey across the Atlantic. The journey, known as the Middle Passage, was a horrific ordeal. Packed into the dark, cramped holds of slave ships, captives endured unimaginable suffering. Many did not survive the brutal voyage. The triangular trade connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas in a cycle of human misery and economic gain. Goods from Europe were traded for slaves in Africa, who were then transported to the Americas. There, their labor produced commodities that were shipped back to Europe. In the Americas, enslaved Africans were forced to work on plantations under brutal conditions. They faced grueling labor, physical punishment, and a complete denial of freedom and dignity. Over 12 million Africans were transported across the Atlantic, with an estimated 1.5 million perishing during the Middle Passage. The survivors endured a life of bondage, yet their spirit of resistance persisted. Resistance took many forms, from uprisings and escape attempts to the preservation of cultural identities. These acts of defiance underscored the resilience and humanity of the enslaved. The 19th century saw growing movements for abolition, led by activists, former slaves, and enlightened thinkers. The Atlantic slave trade was eventually abolished, but its legacy of racial inequality and injustice endures. The Atlantic slave trade left an indelible mark on history, shaping the demographics, economies, and societies of 3 continents. As we reflect on this tragic period, we honor the memory of those who suffered and recognize the enduring impact of their legacy. emgotv360 History, understanding the past to inform the future. Fade out.